On the edge of a quiet village surrounded by green hills stood an old bamboo grove. It was not a large forest, but everyone in the village knew it well. During the day, sunlight could barely reach the ground beneath the tall bamboo. The green stalks leaned toward one another, forming a natural roof over the earth. Whenever the wind blew, the bamboo swayed together and created a soft whispering sound. Some villagers said the grove was mysterious and should be avoided after sunset. But one farmer was never afraid of it. His name was Rahim. Rahim was an ordinary man. He did not own a large farm or have much money. He lived in a small home with his family and worked hard every day to support them. He grew rice and vegetables and sometimes worked on other people's farms. But there was something unusual about Rahim. He never harmed a living creature without a reason. Other farmers sometimes threw stones at birds that ate grain from their fields. Some villagers killed snakes whenever they saw them. Children sometimes caught small animals for amusement. Rahim was different. One day, his wife asked him, "Why are you always so soft-hearted? If birds eat your rice, why don't you chase them away?" Rahim smiled. "Because they are hungry too," he said. His wife frowned. "But what about us? We get hungry too." Rahim became quiet for a moment. Then he said, "We understand our own hunger. Perhaps we become cruel because we forget that other creatures can feel hunger too." Many people in the village did not understand him. They said Rahim was a good man, but perhaps a little foolish. Rahim never seemed to mind. Every morning he walked across the village to work in his fields. Along the way stood the old bamboo grove. For years, he simply passed by it. Then, one afternoon during the rainy season, everything changed. Dark clouds covered the sky. Thunder rolled across the hills, and heavy rain began to fall. The road quickly turned to mud. Rahim was returning from work, carrying his old farming tools and a small cloth bag. He quickly ran into the bamboo grove for shelter. For the first time, he truly noticed how beautiful the place was. The bamboo was so thick that much of the rain could not reach the ground. Dry leaves covered the earth, and there was a small open space near the center of the grove. Rahim looked around. This would be a good place for a small shelter, he thought. But there was a problem. To build one, would he have to cut down the bamboo? He looked carefully around the grove. Then he noticed several old bamboo stalks already lying on the ground. Some had fallen during storms. There were also dry branches and leaves everywhere. Rahim made a decision. He would not cut a single living bamboo stalk. Over the following days, he returned to the grove after finishing his work. He collected fallen bamboo, dry branches, and other materials already lying on the ground. Slowly, he began building a small shelter beneath the living bamboo. Rahim continued working on his small shelter for several days. He used only fallen bamboo, dry branches, and leaves. He did not cut or damage any living bamboo. Slowly, a simple shelter began to take shape beneath the tall green grove. It was small, but it was enough for him. During the farming season, Rahim sometimes had to work far from home. Walking back and forth every day took too much time and energy, so he decided that he would occasionally spend the night in his new shelter. But Rahim did not know that someone had been watching him. High above his shelter lived a large white heron. Its nest was hidden among the tall bamboo branches. Every morning, the heron flew to nearby wetlands to search for food. Before sunset, it returned home. The bird had lived in the bamboo grove for many years. It had seen many humans enter the forest. Some came to cut bamboo. Some destroyed bird nests. Some frightened or hunted small animals. So when the heron first saw Rahim building his shelter, it became worried. From high above, it watched him carefully. It expected him to cut down the bamboo. But Rahim did something different. Whenever he needed wood, he picked up only what had already fallen to the ground. The heron watched with curiosity. Then, one day, something happened. A small bird's nest had been damaged by the wind. One tiny egg rolled from the nest and landed on the forest floor near Rahim. Rahim noticed it. He slowly picked up the fragile egg and looked around. He could have ignored it, but he didn't. He carefully searched the nearby branches until he found the damaged nest. Then, as gently as possible, he returned the egg to its home. The white heron saw everything. For the first time, it began to think that perhaps this human was different. Days turned into weeks. Rahim continued spending time beneath the bamboo. In the evening, he sometimes cooked a simple meal beside his shelter. He always kept the fire small and made sure it was completely extinguished before sleeping. He never left garbage behind. He never disturbed the birds. Slowly, the animals of the grove became less afraid of him. One evening, a small fox came near his shelter. Rahim was eating his dinner. The fox stood quietly in the shadows and watched him. Rahim noticed the animal but did not chase it away. Instead, he placed a little food on the ground several feet away. Then, slowly and carefully, it came forward. It took the food and disappeared into the darkness. High above, White Heron watched. Night after night, the bird continued observing Rahim. The man never threw stones at birds. He never destroyed nests. He never harmed the animals. He seemed to understand something that many humans had forgotten. This bamboo grove was not his alone. It belonged to every creature living there. And without realizing it, Rahim was slowly becoming a part of the bamboo grove itself. The animals began to trust him. And high above, the white heron watched over the quiet farmer beneath the bamboo. One night, a powerful storm came to the village. Dark clouds covered the sky, and strong winds shook the bamboo grove. Rahim was inside his small shelter when he heard a frightened sound outside. He quickly stepped out into the rain and looked around. Near the shelter, he found a small bird lying on the wet ground. The poor bird had fallen during the storm and one of its wings was injured. Rahim carefully picked up the bird. He tore a small piece of cloth from his own clothing and gently covered it to protect it from the cold. He did not try to keep the bird. He simply wanted to help it survive. The next morning, when the rain stopped, Rahim placed the injured bird in a safe area among the bushes. High above, the white heron had watched everything. The bird was beginning to understand that Rahim was not a danger to the bamboo grove. He was different. He respected the animals in the forest. As time passed, Rahim became more familiar with life beneath the bamboo. At night, crickets sang around his shelter. Small rabbits sometimes appeared near the bushes. Birds rested on the branches above him. The white heron remained high in its nest, silently watching the farmer below. One day, however, something terrible happened. Rahim had been feeling weak since the morning, but he still went to work. He could not afford to stop working because his family depended on him. He spent the entire day under the hot sun. By evening, he was exhausted. His body felt heavy and he had developed a high fever. Slowly, he walked toward the bamboo grove and entered his little shelter. He was too weak to prepare food or light a fire. He placed his bag beside him and lay down on the ground. The night became cold, but Rahim had no strength left. High above, the white heron noticed something strange. Usually, Rahim made small sounds before sleeping. Sometimes he quietly sang an old song. Sometimes he sat outside and looked at the stars. But that night, everything was silent. The next morning, the heron looked down again. Rahim had not moved. The bird became restless. It flew down from its nest and landed near the shelter. Then it called loudly. Rahim did not answer. The heron called again and again, but there was still no response. Something was clearly wrong. The bird looked toward the distant village. Then, without wasting another moment, it spread its large white wings and flew away. The white heron flew quickly toward the village. It crossed the fields, the muddy roads, and the small houses until it reached Rahim's home. Rahim's young son was playing outside when he noticed the large white bird circling above the house. "Mother, look!" he shouted. "That bird keeps flying around our house." Rahim's wife came outside and looked up. The heron circled above them once more, then suddenly flew in the direction of the bamboo grove. A few moments later, it returned. Then it flew toward the grove again. The strange behavior made Rahim's wife feel worried. Rahim had not returned home, and now this bird seemed to be trying to tell them something. She quickly called several neighbors. "Please come with me," she said. "I think something may have happened to Rahim." The villagers followed her toward the bamboo grove. As they walked, the white heron appeared again above them. It flew ahead, then waited. When the people came closer, it continued flying toward the grove. It was almost as if the bird was guiding them. Rahim's wife became more frightened with every step. Finally, they reached the small shelter beneath the bamboo. There they found Rahim lying unconscious with a high fever. His wife rushed to his side. The villagers quickly lifted him and carried him back to the village. For several days, Rahim remained weak. His wife cared for him, and the villagers brought food and medicine. Slowly, his fever began to disappear. After some time, Rahim opened his eyes and saw his wife and son sitting beside him. He smiled weakly. He did not know how he had been rescued. When he became strong enough to walk again, he returned to the bamboo grove. It was evening. The sunlight passed gently through the bamboo leaves. Rahim stood quietly beside his little shelter and looked up. High above him, the white heron was sitting on a bamboo branch. For a long moment, the farmer and the bird looked at one another. Rahim smiled. "Was it you?" he asked softly. "Did you bring them to me?" The heron did not answer. It simply opened its wings and flew into the golden evening sky. Rahim watched until the bird disappeared. From that day forward, Rahim understood something even more deeply. Kindness does not always return in the way we expect. Sometimes it returns through a stranger, sometimes through a friend, and sometimes it returns with the wings of a bird. But life in the village would soon bring Rahim another difficult challenge. A few years later, a terrible drought came to the region. The ponds began to dry up, the rice fields cracked under the hot sun, and the villagers became worried about their future. The drought grew worse with every passing week. The nearby wetlands became dry, and many birds and animals struggled to find water. The villagers were desperate. Then one day, a wealthy businessman came to the village with an offer. He wanted to buy the land where the bamboo grove stood. His plan was to cut down the entire grove and build large warehouses. In return, he promised the villagers a large amount of money and new jobs. Many villagers became interested. They were poor, and the drought had made life even more difficult. "We cannot eat trees," one man said. "The money could help our families," said another. A meeting was arranged in the village. The businessman stood before everyone and explained his plan. "Sell me the land," he said. "I will build roads and warehouses. Your village will have more jobs and more money." Some villagers nodded in agreement. Rahim listened quietly. Then he slowly stood up. "I have only one question," he said. The room became silent. Rahim looked at the businessman and asked, "Will your warehouses give us water?" Nobody answered. Rahim continued, "This bamboo grove is not just a collection of trees. Birds live there. Small animals live there. The bamboo protects the soil and helps the land remain healthy. During storms, it protects the village from strong winds. During dry seasons, the ground around it holds more moisture." One man laughed. "You always talk about birds and animals. We need money, not stories about nature." Rahim remained calm. "We need money, yes," he said, "but we also need water, clean air, healthy soil, and a safe place for our children. If we destroy everything today, what will remain tomorrow?" The meeting ended without a decision. The next morning, Rahim walked to the bamboo grove. As he entered, his heart became heavy. Several bamboo stalks had been marked with red paint. Someone had already chosen which ones would be cut down. Rahim stood silently beneath the trees. Above him, the white heron watched from its nest. The farmer looked around at the birds, the animals, and the tall bamboo. He knew he had to do something. But Rahim was only a poor farmer. He had no great power and no large amount of money. For a moment, he wondered what one ordinary man could possibly do to save an entire grove. Then he remembered something important. The children of the village had grown up without truly understanding the value of the forest around them. Many of them had never looked closely at a bird's nest or noticed the small animals living beneath the trees. The next morning, Rahim went to the village school and spoke to a teacher. He asked if he could take some of the children to the bamboo grove. The teacher agreed. Soon, a group of curious children followed Rahim into the forest. He showed them the tall bamboo and explained how it protected the land. He pointed to small bird nests hidden among the branches. He showed them tiny animal paths on the ground. The children watched with surprise and excitement. For the first time, many of them understood that the bamboo grove was more than just a group of trees. It was a home. Rahim told them, "Every living creature here depends on this place. If we destroy it, they will have nowhere to go." The children listened carefully. Soon they began talking about the bamboo grove with their families. Some of them made simple posters asking people to protect it. They carried the posters through the village and spoke to their parents and neighbors. Slowly, people began to think differently. Several older villagers remembered that the bamboo grove had protected the area during powerful storms. Others noticed that even during the drought, the soil near the grove remained cooler and held more moisture than the dry fields around it. The businessman returned and again asked the villagers to sell the land. But this time, more people questioned his plan. What will happen to the birds? One child asked. Where will the animals go? Asked another. The villagers began discussing the future of the grove more seriously. Rahim did not ask anyone to follow him blindly. He simply asked them to look carefully at what they already had before destroying it. Another village meeting was called. This time, the room was filled with adults, children, and families. Everyone had something to say. Some still wanted the money, but others believed that losing the bamboo grove would create problems that money could not solve. Finally, the villagers decided to vote. The decision would determine the future of the forest. Rahim stood quietly among the crowd as the people prepared to make their choice. The villagers began casting their votes one by one. Some remembered the difficult years when the bamboo grove had protected their homes from strong winds and storms. Others thought about the birds, animals, and children who loved the forest. After everyone had voted, the village leaders counted the results. The decision was finally made. The bamboo grove would not be destroyed. A few old and naturally damaged bamboo stalks could be used when necessary, but the living grove would remain protected. The businessman was disappointed. He left the village without his warehouses. Rahim did not celebrate loudly. He simply returned to the bamboo grove and stood beneath the tall green bamboo. The wind moved gently through the leaves. High above, the white heron was sitting quietly on a branch. Rahim looked up and smiled. Years passed. Rahim grew old. His hair and beard slowly turned white, and his hands became rough from a lifetime of farming. The village changed too. New roads were built, more houses appeared, and the younger generation grew up. But the bamboo grove remained. Birds still built their nests there. Small animals still moved quietly through the grass and fallen leaves. One evening, Rahim walked slowly toward the grove with his young grandson. The boy looked around with wonder. "Grandfather," he asked, "were you really friends with a bird?" Rahim smiled. "You do not always need words to become friends," he said. The boy looked up at the tall bamboo. "Then how did you become friends?" Rahim became quiet for a moment. Then he looked toward the sky. "I protected its home," he said, "and one day it helped save my life." Just then, a large white heron flew across the golden evening sky. The boy watched it with wide eyes. Rahim watched it too. Perhaps it was not the same bird. Many years had passed. Maybe it was the child or grandchild of the heron that had once lived above his shelter. Or perhaps it was simply another white bird flying home. But to Rahim, it did not matter. The lesson remained the same. Every living creature has a place in this world. A small act of kindness may seem unimportant at first, but it can create a connection that lasts for years. Rahim had once been only a poor farmer walking past an old bamboo grove. He never imagined that by respecting nature, he would one day receive help from it when he needed it most. As the sun slowly disappeared behind the hills, the bamboo leaves moved gently in the wind. Rahim and his grandson stood silently beneath the trees, watching the white heron disappear into the distance, and the old bamboo grove remained peaceful and alive, protecting the stories of everyone who had once called it home.